Welcome everybody to Seattle Bike Blog TV. For this week's Bike News Roundup video, you'll have your editor, Tom Fucaloro, and I'm joined by Kelly Reefer.
Yeah, hello. I'm excited to be here in our living room. That's pretty much the only place we go these days, so.
Yeah. We're sporting the newest in COVID-19 fashion, sewn today by Kelly here. Mm-hmm. They are excellent, I might add, and so, cheers to that. Okay. We live together, so I guess we don't have to wear these.
And we're inside our house.
So. And we're inside our house, but yeah, these are really cool. You want to explain a little bit about them?
Oh, sure. Hold on.
Just a quick.
They're a little stuck in my hair. Yeah, so this was a really simple pattern that was shared online, and it has multiple layers. There's an inner layer and an outer layer, so you know which side goes out. And then there's a pocket where you can put a filter. I actually saw that you can use a coffee filter in a pinch if you want to add a little bit additional filtration. And then it used gardening wire, but I didn't have that. I do have pipe cleaners, so I made pipe cleaners up here to make a little bridge around the nose. And then you just put it on over your head. Do you want to demonstrate?
Okay, you're going to put me on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. Put it on over your head and then tie it around. And then the little pipe cleaner's in there to fit around the bridge. And then you tie it back. Mine's a little bit too short. I made mine first, so I learned lessons on that one. It didn't take very long to sew. I haven't sewn in a few years, so it's an excuse to kind of bust out my sewing machine and find old fabric in my stash and just get it done. And I ended up making some masks for some of our friends who live nearby and needed some and are doing a lot of delivery work right now. So. And
we'll put a link to the
pattern I used.
The pattern in the video description. You want to check that out. And in the blog post, we'll put it there too. Great. Well, thanks for joining me for this chat about bike news. So this one's really weird because I started collecting the links before we went on lockdown. And so it was funny going through them again, and there were just a whole bunch of them I just had to delete because I'm like, this doesn't...
None of it feels... Like, a lot of it doesn't feel relevant. It's like, in some ways it's hard to talk about biking.
Yeah.
During this time, but at the same time, we need to talk about a few other things other than COVID-19. However, a lot of our stories touch on that, so... Yeah,
it's hard to miss. Well, we should jump right in. What do you say?
Let's go.
All right. Well, this one's lovely. So Matthew Fleming down in Tacoma lost his job. And, well, here, let's let the video take it away.
Hey, Chris! You're the #1 bird man of Tacoma! Hey, Len! You're such a beefcake! It's a positive shout, positive message from one friend to another, friend, family, coworker, just a positive message going from one person to another. I started doing it because I was angry at my situation and how I got laid off, and I really wanted to scream and yell and let out some frustration. And one way I kind of do that is by riding my bike, is by relieving stress. And it kind of struck me one day that a lot of other people are probably feeling the same way. And it was like, how can I turn this negative situation of like losing my job and feeling frustrated and feeling angsty and feeling angry and turn it into something good? And I decided just to kind of put the two together and shout and yell at people while I was riding my bike. The happy birthday shouts, because I'm like singing happy birthday, and it's usually to a kid. You know, the kid's not seeing their grandma or grandpa or their aunt and uncle, and they like get this like really big grin on their face because this stranger's singing happy birthday. It's just so cool. Birthday, dear Weston!
What a weird birthday present.
I like
so
that.
I should say that's in the Tacoma News Tribune. Or I guess it's just the News Tribune. The paper is having a hard time, so you should subscribe. They do good work. Go on.
Oh, I totally relate to that feeling of just feeling frustrated and needing to get out and like having a lot of emotions and not a lot of outlets for it. So I like that somebody is just going out, only doing positive shouts too. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. It's just what a way to get out some frustration.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we should do the next story, which don't have a ton to say about this other than it's just very cool. So this is a photography project by Tosin of TIA International Photography. Just hopped on his bike and has been kind of just biking around Seattle, amid the lockdown and just taking these eerie but beautiful pictures of just like a city that should have lots of people.
I mean, the Pike Place Market one is the one that really gets me,
I know.
because like that is such a heart of our city and it's so vibrant. There's always so many people and I don't know. That one's the one that like really, really gets me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like during the daytime, it's never like this.
Yeah.
You never get to see that. So in the post, I have linked to the first one of these, but he's done a bunch of them. So you should just check out his site, and I think it's a really interesting idea for a photo project, and it'll be interesting to see. Maybe if he does a collection at some point later on when we all have time to reflect on this as though it happened in the past. It's hard to see it in the present in real time, but yeah. So thank you, Tosin, for he just kind of added Seattle Bike Blog on Twitter and said, "Hey, check this out," and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing."
Yeah,
so yeah, thanks for letting us know. Here we can cheers to this one.
Yay!
So, yeah.
Screw 'em. Sorry, is that rude?
No, absolutely not. Good riddance. Good riddance.
If anybody has just had the displeasure of being passed on a bike by one of the ducks, the kind of fear of not being seen. You've probably also had someone make a joke about being on the Spandex Highway along the Burt Gilman Trail, and you're like, I'm wearing a dress and some, like, I don't really wear heels, but, like, some boots,
Yep.
Anyway, whatever. Goodbye, ducks. We don't need you on our streets anymore.
No. I'm kind of disappointed that they closed up due to business decisions and not because the city or the state shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so mad that after the horrific collision on the Aurora Bridge, that
wasn't the end of them.
That wasn't. It should have just been that duck was the last one to ever be on the roads of Seattle. Like they never should have gotten back on the roads, and it's a huge failure of state and local policy that this thing that is not necessary to our city caused a huge number of lives to be lost, and that this is not the first time here or around the country especially that these kind of tours have killed mass numbers of people.
Well, you could do the same thing without that
with
particular
a
vehicle.
bus and a boat.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the same one. Like I get that that's like a novelty, but scores of people are being killed by them every year, and I don't understand how we can't just say, all right, well, this isn't worth that many lives. I mean, honestly, it's not worth one life, but it's definitely not worth the tragedy in Branson, like the fact that they kept driving on the streets of Seattle even after what happened in Branson with the same roofs that trapped the people in Branson when the boat sank. I mean, it's just such a failure of our policy that we were not able to shut them down. I'm glad they're gone.
Good riddance.
I'm sure there are good people who have worked there, and I'm sure there are people who are sad about it, but it's a good thing for the city This business should not have existed. It shouldn't exist anywhere in the country. And we need to move on, find some other ways to tour the city that don't involve these vehicles. They're not road ready, and they're not seaworthy. And yet they do both. They're bad cars and they're bad boats. So maybe we shouldn't use them.
Goodbye, ducks.
Goodbye, ducks.
You will not be missed in this household.
No. Here's another short one. People in Ballard have probably figured this one out by now. But the Ballard locks are closed. So, I mean, they're open for boats. They're operating for boats. The waterway is working. But the park and
the pedestrian crossings are all shut down.
Yeah. So for a lot of people who are walk their bike through there to get across the ship canal, because the next closest comfortable crossing is Fremont Bridge, which is miles away, and some, depending where you're going, very out of the way. So yeah, it sucks because the Ballard Bridge sidewalks are also terrible and extremely skinny. And you talk about
safe passing distance, not on the Ballard Bridge.
6 feet of separation. Like there's not
even like 6 feet.
There's like 3 feet total, and people can go both ways on that. Like you basically have to like brush against each other to even get by. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you got to bike all the way to the Fremont Bridge now.
At the same time, I totally understand, right? Like, there's so many, close encounters on the locks too, right?
No, the locks can't be open.
Yeah.
It just sucks because it points out one more reason why this is not a good transportation corridor. Where for people who need to get across the ship canal, and it's just one of our only options, and it's not a good option for that reason. Mm-hmm. It's a cool one, it's awesome, but it's not reliable. Because the locks also closed down during the government shutdown a few years back.
Oh yeah.
So it's just like, we got to find a way to get across the ship canal that is not the locks. And if it's the Ballard Bridge, it needs to be more than like 3 feet. Because this sucks because like people need to get across, and if you don't have a car, you're screwed.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So Bird is not here yet, but Bird makes. If you're not familiar with the company, they were one of the first companies to go all in on scooters. So the shared electric scooters that are kind of everywhere except Seattle. But so private bike share and the scooters, you can lump them together into micro mobility, I guess. This one isn't. I'm not so much interested in Bird laying off 30% of its employees because everyone's laying off lots of people. But I'm more interested in this paragraph here. It says that Lime recently cut its valuation from $2.4 billion to $400 million. Which sounds...
That's a lot. It's a pretty big number.
Yeah, it's a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah, part of it is looking at, as we're sort of prepping for this, we talked a little bit about, will micromobility survive? Right now we're relying on a lot of these companies that are startups, and do they have the resilience to make it through this? We don't really know. Does the concept of micromobility, is that going to still be around in the recovery in the wake of all of this? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that people will be looking for independent means to get around. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's an opportunity there. If people, very unfortunately, what I'm very worried about, don't want to take transit, even once we have a vaccine and stuff, like if the
oh yeah,
the hangover of avoiding crowds and all that keeps going, and fewer people want to go back. I mean, things like micromobility could help,
but they have to survive this period of likely certain recession first. And if those companies don't make it through, are they going to be able to bounce back?
Right. Yeah.
I also think a little bit about the touching thing. I know you're like, you could bring hand sanitizer and, wipe your hands and stuff. But I also feel like I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of hang-ups about shared things and shared spaces and a fear around that.
Totally.
So it's hard to tell like how this is going to evolve and where it's going to go, and
Yep. Yeah.
And this was like not top of mind when you're thinking of all the like impacts, right? There's so many impacts that are happening.
No, and this valuation isn't because of COVID-19. Like that's not what caused Lime to be devalued like that. This is kind of, we were already discussing before this outbreak, like, can these companies make it? Mm-hmm. And now the outbreak is this huge test, of everybody, including them. I think it's just interesting because it's a story we've been following for so long, bike share, and now this comes along. It's like, this kind of blows up the whole thing all over again. Mm-hmm. Which is, I'm just keeping an eye on it, because ultimately this decision's going to be made by venture capitalists. Yeah. Like, do they want to keep pumping money into these companies? Right. Because they don't make money, so.
Right. And it also, I think, as we're seeing, we'll talk a little more about funding later down, but like as we're seeing local budgets getting more constrained and more restricted, it's not going to be feasible for local governments to run their own micromobility programs. If the venture capitalists don't survive, the government isn't going to be able to step in and be like, oh, people loved bike share and scooter share. Like, that is not happening right now. Or I would be very, very, very surprised if anyone went in that direction.
Yeah, I wonder. Or if, like, transit agencies will be desperately trying to find other ways to stay relevant.
But they're not going to have a ton of money,
Yeah? I mean, it's a lot cheaper than buses. But, yeah, I understand that. Like, they're going to have so many... Oh, God. Anyway.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be an unfolding situation. And I think the interesting part of this to me is it just brings up the larger impact of how do we see transportation in a post-COVID-19 world. And I think it's, there are some things that I think might do a lot better. I think personal bike riding might go up a lot. I feel like that's actually one of the areas where we might see a lot of people find their bikes and hop on them and decide that this is something that feels good and safe for them.
Yeah, e-bikes are going to go gangbusters.
If the e-bike stores can make it through this. I mean, I think that's something else, right? If our supply chain can keep supplying e-bikes, like there's still a lot of...
There's going to be a period where it's going to be hard to buy one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the outcome will be...
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, obviously, Lime and Bird are not the most important things happening right now, but just a thing to keep an eye out for. All right. This is a very good story in Vox. I highly recommend reading it because it kind of put into words something I'd been kind of thinking. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people have been kind of thinking, and just kind of like that this whole crossover thing, craze that's kind of been going on in, I guess, the past decade, of the huge boom in whatever they claim a crossover to be, still a light duty truck by official definition, has sort of been that way of getting around the fact that people thought SUVs were large and irresponsible, gas guzzling monstrosities, when a crossover really isn't that much smaller. But somehow it was palatable enough to sell the public on the idea of SUVs. I don't know, what else did you...
Well, last time we talked a lot about SUVs and cars and the dangers of collisions that happen with larger vehicles for the people on the outside. And I think this is interesting because it really shows that, people, I don't know, it's like, what are people looking for when they're buying a car? And, what are they thinking about? And I think in Seattle, especially, you get a lot of folks who want a car to go out to the mountains and to go camping and exploring. And I think the crossover car is the kind of one that like appeals to a lot of those folks, because it's like you got enough room for all your gear and all your stuff, and you can go adventuring, but it's like not so big, but it's still pretty large and egregious. And yeah,
and like, car companies aren't selling crossovers and SUVs because it's not pure because the people want it. It's because
what they make money on.
Yeah, and they've been able to convince people that it's worth a premium to get that extra volume on the interior of the car. And sort of like building a house where like...
Oh, yeah. That's a
like,
good metaphor.
Building a small house is still kind of
Analogy.
expensive because you still need all of the pieces of a house in a small house.
We learned that the hard way, living in our small house and building
Yes.
it.
So, like,
you have to pay for the kitchen.
Yeah.
You gotta pay for all the plumbing. You gotta do all the heating. You gotta do all the windows. Like,
Yeah.
you may not have as many windows, but you still have windows.
Yeah, and you got to pay for roofing. You got to pay for permitting. All of that is sunk no matter what size it is. So actually growing larger in your square footage does not scale up on like a 1-to-1 for your cost, right? Like you can get larger without, like a 2,000 square foot house does not cost twice as much as a 1,000 square foot house. Not even close. Same goes with cars, but so their cost is way lower to just give you more volume inside the car, but versus it's not like a larger car. Like it costs them not that much more to make a crossover than it does for them to make a sedan.
Mm-hmm. And they can sell a crossover for a lot more money.
Yeah, they can tack $10,000 on to something that they only paid, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000 more in their costs, right? So that's a huge profit window that they like a lot. And so they've convinced people through advertising that these are the things that they want and that these are practical cars and all that. And
what I always think is so funny, so we don't have a car, and people are always like, well, how do you move like big things? And honestly, there's so many large, awkward things that we move by bike that are literally easy to do by bike than if you were trying to fit them into like the back of a crossover car or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Even an SUV. Like our chairs that I'm sitting on, you picked up by bike, and that worked out really easily. And you hauled our mattress and our bed frame by bike, although I'm not going to go so far as to say that was easy, but but it was doable, where it's like you couldn't put you could put a mattress on top of a car.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's
such a pain to put your mattress on top of a car. I hate doing it.
It's not always easier, you know?
No, absolutely. Like, I understand, like, pickup trucks, for example, for people who their life involves moving lots of things around. Pickup trucks are very
useful.
I don't find a crossover that much more useful than a sedan. Like the difference in the volume of air on the interior really isn't relevant at all. Same number of seats. Mm-hmm. If you get a hatchback, Ford Focus, you can fit so much stuff in there. Mm-hmm. That I don't know. I don't get it. But anyway, it's what's happening right now. I think it's important for people to be aware of it, and be aware that the motive for selling crossovers is not because people genuinely just want them more. It's they are more profitable, and then they've pumped an enormous amount of marketing into them. So to the point where it feels like it's your only option, are these mainstream crossover models that. Don't be fooled. Just buy a small car if you need a car. And question whether you need it at all. Because cars will kill you.
Just a nice little happy aside right there.
Yes. COVID-19 is terrible. And also cars are still terrible also. Mm-hmm. As well. In addition to. Mm-hmm.
As we've been thinking a lot about respiratory health and our lungs, we can move on to this next story on the toxic brake dust. I think a lot of times when we talk about pollution, it's a really clear link to fossil fuels, and still definitely worth fighting and eliminating. But I think remembering that electrification of vehicles isn't going to solve all of those pollutants, and the brake dust it's very insidious. I think thinking this story is London based, but looking locally,
we have the same brakes.
We have the same brakes, and we also I don't have a source for this, and we should try to pull it up, but the salmon are impacted by the brake dust of...
Okay, here we go. Something's killing coho salmon in Seattle. Car tires are a prime suspect. So, basically the particles from car tires, and also previous research, copper shavings from brake pads in cars. They just little bits and pieces of all of the mechanisms of a car that are necessary for operation that you don't think of as exhaust are leaving themselves on the ground, and then it rains, that gets washed into the waterways, and they can be very toxic in very specific ways. And specifically, the salmon have been hit hard, but they're obviously not the only species hit hard. It's just we've been able to prove the connection between copper and brake pads and tires wearing down, which are just a couple more ways that these are problems that even electric cars are going to have.
Right. And the electric car doesn't solve a lot of the problems that are problems with cars. And this is just another example of this kind of unintended consequences of focusing so much of our environmental policy on getting people to drive electric vehicles. And really that focus needs to be on providing safe other ways for people to get around. Oh, God, I'm just really nervous that everybody's going to go back to driving after all of this is over. I think that's just, there's so many things that we don't know, but I think that's one of the things I'm really concerned about, especially in Seattle, because we had a lot of people who opted into other modes and weren't riding transit because they had to. They were riding transit because it was accessible and worked well for them. And I'm afraid that they're going to go back to driving. And we're just going to have to do a lot of that work and advocacy again to get people back on the bus.
Yep. And we will have probably less money to do it with.
Yeah, sorry to be in the downer part of the news cycle, but yeah, this is a really challenging time. I-976 was pretty devastating in November, and now it is really, really unfortunate, especially as we're looking at the sales tax, which is a major revenue generator for transit. It's diminishing because nobody's going out, nobody's buying anything. Like our budget is in bad shape, and also I think we're gonna have to. I don't really know where the city and the county are at. I know the county doesn't want to do a ballot measure to fund transit for this November, and it's going to be a hard sell because sales tax is what we'd have to go on, and I just don't. I think we're just going to see impending cuts unless something really really different approach is taken to funding transit.
Yeah.
And so we really need to be, I think, encouraging elected officials and legislators to be thinking creatively about financing and funding sources for this, beyond the car tab fees, beyond sales tax. There are different funding tools that need to be shifted to make transit function again.
Yep. We haven't lost I-976 yet. It's going to the Supreme Court. But you always want to be the one defending a successful decision rather than the one appealing the odds are just not in your favor necessarily, but you never know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, in some ways, the problem is so massive for transit that this is starting to feel like a smaller and smaller thing, because it's like, well, the actual amount of money we need
all of a sudden just completely shifted.
Yeah, like in some ways I understand King County's decision to not pursue the ballot measure because
absolutely.
It probably wouldn't pass. People are not looking to tax business, sales tax right now. When it's gonna be at a time when like businesses are like maybe trying to open their doors again, and
hopefully,
we're gonna be trying to give businesses money to stay afloat, not
taxing
taking money from them.
Yeah.
But then also, like, the amount of money it was going to raise would have been nice addition of service to what we had. Like, it would have been incremental improvement. But we need a massive bailout and a massive restructuring of the budget. In which transit is not funded by these piecemeal,
Sustainable. You need sustainable, ongoing revenue that isn't as susceptible to fluctuating with a recession or, with the whims of Tim Eyman's ballot measures. Like, we need something just very, very reliable, and that is something Washington State doesn't have right now. We just don't have that, and there's a lot of potential tools that could be used.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to need the state's help on this. And both, it would be help if the state ever actually funded transit, practically at all.
Well, and then we start to get into this weird cycle. This is me being a little bit pessimistic here. But if we don't see transit ridership rebound by the next legislative session in the state, it's going to be a hard case to give them a ton of money, even though it's the right thing to do from an equity perspective and a global climate change perspective, which is also a major catastrophic issue that we're still dealing with. And so, it's the right thing to do, but if you don't see that ridership, you don't see that demand, it's hard to be like, let's put billions of dollars in towards our transit system. Mm-hmm. And the federal bailout did have money for transit, but you were saying a lot of that was going to go to ferries. I didn't see that, but
yeah, it's $500-something million for the region, but that's split between all of the agencies, Community Transit, Pierce Transit, King County Metro, Sound Transit, and the Washington State Ferries, which is when I saw that the ferries was included too, it's like, well, this isn't going to be enough money for any of them.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a mess. There's so many parts of the budget are going to need to be completely reimagined, and transit is right there with the rest of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so, if I try to be more hopeful and, optimistic about the things that could come out, I think, we could be looking at a greater movement to redistribute wealth in a way that is more equitable and is ensuring that we're funding people who are vulnerable, that we're paying anyone who's an essential worker a living wage, that we're supporting people with health care and doing the right things for childcare and education, doing the right things for transportation. Maybe we'll take this as our reckoning and be oh, we've got a lot of things we need to take care of.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I do think, everyone is sacrificing so much right now. I should say, everyone's not exactly accurate. Our billionaires seem to be doing almost nothing, which, so if any of you out there thought the billionaires were going to come rescue us, if we really needed them, they'd be there for us, well, you have your answer now. So, it's what I saw, Bill Gates is generously donating $25 million. It's pfft. Oh my God. That's the same as buying a cup of coffee for us. It's he got like positive headlines out of that. It's like no. Like,
God, billions of dollars is just really hard to wrap your head around.
It is.
Like it's very hard.
But like, if there was ever a time to spend that money, like if you're saving that money for something,
this is kind of a good time.
What else could you possibly be saving it for?
I
I don't know. I guess you want to like.
Got to build a rocket and like go to outer space for some reason.
Right.
That's a really good use of resources and time.
So anyway, I think hopefully people are paying attention to that. And they're seeing that, well, they're not being responsible stewards of the wealth of the nation. And so I don't think that we need to coddle them anymore.
Essential? Is there a single billionaire who has an essential job? No.
I mean, they had the heads of companies that employ a lot of people, which is good for the economy, I guess.
But I mean, it's like Jeff Bezos isn't
Yeah.
protecting his workers. He's not giving them the resources that they need.
No.
He's not ensuring they have paid sick time. Like, are you kidding me?
Nope.
It's
No.
it's pretty asinine to actually think about anyone having that many personal resources and not having any empathy for other human beings who are doing very challenging and demanding work on a regular day, and now they're doing it in the middle of a global pandemic where they're putting their lives and their family at risk, and it's just not okay. It's like not a moral thing to do.
No. We have the richest person in the world, and I don't know where Bill Gates is on the list anymore, 2 or 3 in the world, living in our region, and then a ton of other extremely rich people, and yet our food banks are having trouble, providing food to people in need. We don't have anywhere for people who are experiencing homelessness to go and ride this out in a safe space.
Where they could wash their hands.
They could wash their freaking hands, which is rule number 1. But if you don't have a sink and soap, you can't wash your hands. Like, it's not a choice if you don't have. So, I think people, hopefully are seeing that Jeff Bezos didn't say, I'm going to buy a hotel, and people who are experiencing homelessness can ride out the outbreak there. He could do that. He could buy
easily.
He could buy every hotel.
He could actually just buy them a house.
He could buy.
he could just buy him a house.
He could buy every single person experiencing homelessness a house, except that there's not houses for everyone, which is the problem with that math. But yeah, he could if they were there. And it would probably be like me buying 3 coffees or something.
Might be more than 3 coffees. It might be like...
He has a lot of money. It might not be. and I don't have a lot of money, so... Anyway, I think one thing to keep in mind is that when we come out of this, so many people have sacrificed to get through this. And so when we get to the other side, I think that there's a very good chance that people are going to have a sense of ownership over the outcome. I put in my sweat just like everyone else, and now I need a piece of this country that
works for us.
And we're going to demand more. Yeah.
And also, I think
we did our part.
Around,
time for others to do their part.
I think we're seeing the value of labor, right? Like, people's work is what creates value. It isn't, just some billionaire being a billionaire. It's like you going to your job is what creates value.
Just because you can pay minimum wage without benefits to have someone work in a grocery store doesn't mean that is what that job was actually worth.
Well, and now I think we really understand how much that job is worth.
Yeah, turns out pretty freaking important. I mean, we should pay people at least enough to have health care and pay rent. Is that so much to ask? Minimum, yeah.
Maybe you should get a vacation. I don't know what else. You should be able to afford childcare.
Yeah. Afford to send that child to university. Yeah. I mean, these are not unreasonable things to ask. And I hope that, that is an outcome of this, because I think people have been convinced by the billionaires of our country that we're not worthwhile, we're not worthy. We're not billionaires because it's our fault and we didn't work hard enough. And I hope that this experience, when we come out the other side, people are like, nah, that's bullshit. I'm worth it. I worked for this. I sacrificed for this, and so we should all get a piece of it when it's done. But we'll see. All right, somehow we got there from car tabs.
It's whatever. It's part of our.
All right.
What's this one? Oh, yeah.
I think this is an interesting graphic. It's not based on, from what I can tell, like some sort of like very significant study. It's more of like a assumption on like okay, so we all know. So this is European, so it's not in feet, but so 6 feet, 2 meters. Minimum separation. But that's people sort of
standing still.
Yeah. So clearly, if you're like moving, the space, the airspace that you just occupied, your respiratory signature.
Oh.
I saw that phrase floating around. Your respiratory signature. Space where feasibly, the droplets from your breathing could be still in the air for someone else to inhale. Some of it gets left behind you, right? So someone behind you who's also moving at a speed should probably have more than 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And depending how fast the both of you are going, you should keep increasing that distance. The problem is I'm not sure we have like great studies to figure out exactly what this means for virus transmission. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we don't have time to conduct great studies to figure out exactly.
You just gotta do it.
Yeah, so...
Well, and I think part of what I wanted to talk about on this one is, like, we're in this moment where you really can't do a lot, but you can go for a bike ride. And so a lot of people are choosing to go for a bike ride. I'm one of those people. I've chosen to go for some bike rides because I need to move my body. I need some, like, a mental reprieve from all of this. Not just our home, but also just the news and the onslaught of everything. And so bike ride has been an important part of that mental health and physical health for people. But, how are we dealing with interacting with each other is out on our bikes. And we went to the Arboretum, I think the week before. It was before playgrounds were closed, but you were still...
right before.
It was like, you're still pretty encouraged to stay home. And I have never seen the Arboretum so full. And, we were on the Arboretum bike path that's really nice. And there were so many people. And we didn't last very long on it because it just, all of a sudden, it didn't feel safe. It didn't feel like the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so part of this is, I think, how do we... sounds counterintuitive advice, but choose the ugly routes to go to, like not your most scenic park. Just go biking in your own neighborhood and trying to like see the things that maybe you haven't noticed on roads before, because our bigger parks, the Berkman Trail, for instance, all of those places are still a little bit crowded, and it is hard to keep that kind of space between people.
Yeah, so, okay. 15 kilometers per hour is 10-ish miles per hour, correct?
Dude, I don't know.
So, and 6.2 meters is 13 feet?
I was just making you do it.
Did you do that? No. 20 feet? That's 20 feet.
Yeah. People are not keeping that kind of distance out on the Berkman Trail.
20 feet between people. Well,
maybe sometimes. But not around the lights. Like, we were by the
but when you get to the light, you don't have to do 2, right? Like, that's what's so weird about it. Like, the space you need to keep, right, depending on your speed, grows and shrinks. But still, yeah, I mean, it's...
Like, I think people are doing their best. I have noticed a lot better passing most of the people have been really generous about giving space. I think people have been better about passing pedestrians than I've ever seen. People are often not that great about doing that on the Burke-Gilman. But like Green Lake was another example of a place that felt pretty crowded around there. Fewer people biking now, but
I mean, you shouldn't bike on the Green Lake path anyway. You're allowed to, but you shouldn't. It's not fun. It's too crowded on a good day.
People who aren't like used to biking a lot, like if you're just busting out your bike because like it is one of the 3 things you can do to leave your house.
Yeah.
And you're not comfortable on the roads, I could see wanting to like choose those paths that feel comfortable.
Absolutely. I mean, it's wonderful. Like, you go at night. I love biking around Green Lake at night. It's wonderful, and then you have plenty of space.
We should do that sometime. Just wake our kid up from bedtime and like go, or just bike around like with a really crabby toddler.
Yeah,
what could go wrong?
Such a good idea. So yeah, this is just something I want people to think about. I don't have any like science necessarily to back this up, and I don't think anyone really does. But we can't wait for the science, so I think you got to use your best judgment. And this definitely feels true.
And also just like find different routes in your neighborhood. Find different places. Slow down a little bit. Pay attention to the spring cherry blossoms and you don't have to go to the UW Quad to see the cherry blossoms. There are many cherry trees in the region.
Yep.
There's many flowering things.
And it's not a bad idea to bike with a mask.
Yeah. I think we should probably start.
I
made them today, so.
Yeah. And it's about to become recommended, if it is not already recommended officially. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's one more thing that we just have to get used to, become the new normal, is wearing a mask. Yeah. All right, let's end on a happy note. I mean, it's still about a virus outbreak, but it's, we're gonna have to watch the ad again. But it's Bikeworks, and Bikeworks always makes me happy.
Yay, Bikeworks! Also, if you've got the means, donating to Bikeworks is a really great idea right now. They had to cancel their bike excitement auction.
Postponed.
Postponed.
But yeah, I mean, that's
but still donate to them.
Blow a huge hole in their budget until then.
Yeah, so.
And they're being, they're trying to be cool to the people who work there. Of course, this is not going to work for me right now. There we go. But so they can't, so much of their programming. So Bikeworks is not just the shop. The shop is like
a small piece of it.
Yeah, the tip of the iceberg of what Bikeworks does. And the bulk of their programming happens in the warehouse and in schools and doing after-school programs and things like that. Obviously after-school programs are canceled, and we have no idea when they're going to come back. And just like everyone else, they're in a position that's going to be very difficult. But they did figure out. So they were one of the first bike shops, if not the first bike shop, to close with the outbreak kind of. Before,
imminent.
Yeah, before any businesses were told to close, they closed on their own. They closed on the whole organization, and then they got to work figuring out how can we make this bike shop work differently so that we don't have to interact and we can disinfect things properly and all that. So they spent 3 weeks doing that. They built an entire online store, which is
that's a lot of work.
Yeah, especially for a used bike junk store.
Nobody has pictures of all the parts. They had to take all of those.
So I don't think they have every single little piece in there, but I mean it's they sell just a lot of different things, and so it was a ton of work to do a brand new online shop. But what's cool is you can shop online and put together what you want to buy, and then just pick it up from them at the door. You don't have to have them ship it or whatever. But that way you just don't have to go in and you're not browsing around. In fact, I don't think they let you in.
No.
And I know Alex at 2020 Cycles in the Central District they also have a situation like that where you can't go into the shop anymore He said it's actually kind of more efficient in a lot of ways because it's just, instead of people kind of browsing around and saying like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Instead, like, you come to the door and there's like, what do you need? And they tell you, and then you go get it and bring it back to them. It's like, in some ways, it's like we just cut to the chase. Like, what do you need? And we're just going to go get it for you. So...
I liked browsing aimlessly.
I know, I liked it too. I liked it too. But
now
also,
it's not the time.
Yeah.
And there are some other bike shops that are still sort of figuring out how to service bikes and provide parts and things. That's still around.
Yep. And so you should always, call ahead or check out the website of any shop. Just see what their system is, because lots of people are doing different things. Some people are doing scheduling appointments. Some aren't. Some are have an online store. Some don't. Some have closed and they're just going to be closed, and that's fine too. That's totally a reasonable decision. Everyone's making it up as they go. There's no right or wrong. I mean, the only wrong would be not doing anything different.
Yeah.
And not being safe, I guess. But there's not a lot of there was no manual on this. You didn't study this in bike mechanic school. Even though most bike mechanics didn't go to school, but anyway. For to be a bike mechanic, I should say.
Some people did that. Some people took special training courses. And...
Some people did.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show this video because, of course it's Bikeworks and I love Bikeworks. But also it starts off with, boom, Seattle Bike Plug sticker right in the front.
Much more than just a bike shop.
Let's rewind. Let's watch it again. Let's watch it again.
Sort of this iconic...
Yeah,
wow.
Seattle Bike Plug sticker.
Bikeworks is much
I
more
hear
than
new
just
stickers
a
are
bike
going to be
shop.
coming out.
Like a yellow house and sort of
yeah,
this iconic
stickers
building
have been
in Columbia
ordered.
City.
So if you're a paying supporter, you're going to get stickers in the mail. And for the first time ever, green stickers.
Woo!
We closed right away when we started to see the writing on the wall.
Very exciting. I'm sure no more important news.
Then you will get some stickers in the mail at some point in time.
No,
We're not actually interacting with customers face to face right now.
Customers drop in by appointment only, so there's no overlap.
We have a detailed system where we're disinfecting all bikes before they come in the shop and disinfecting them before they go out.
What they hope will prove to be a foolproof way to keep the wheels moving.
Part of our whole mission is to make cycling and bike repair accessible, and especially now in a time of crisis, we're going the extra mile to make sure that anybody who needs bike repair services can get them.
Especially for essential...
Yes. Thank you, Bikeworks. Thanks to everyone who's keeping people rolling, all the other bike shops in town who are doing that work.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing. Like, not everywhere has deemed bike shops essential. And so I think it speaks a lot to the fact that, biking is a core part of our region and a thing that a lot of people rely on. And I was thinking a lot about the healthcare workers who have been biking. I remember when we were spending a lot of time in the hospital with our little one, some of our favorite nurses biked, and that was one thing we got to bond with them over. And it's a tough time, and at least bikes bring a little bit of joy into your day. And
this is gonna be a really hard week in this country. It's kind of fun to be able to talk about bikes for an hour.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that with me. And thanks everyone who watched this, who needed to escape a little bit, even though we didn't
we
totally
didn't
escape.
give them a lot of an escape.
But, got to think about biking, I guess. Because it is important to our city right now, and it's also a healthy thing to do, and it's a good, positive thing. Whew. It's also a little bit of an escape. And you're allowed to have an escape right now, so long as you're, being responsible
safe about it.
And, you got to take care of yourself.
And I think mentally is really important too. I feel like for me personally, it's the mental health aspects of biking even more than the physical that have been really important.
Yep. All right. Well, I don't think we have anything else to add on this video, do we?
No. Stay safe.
I love all of you.
Yeah.
Someday we will all get together and have a big bike hug. I look forward to that. A long time away.
Support each other. You know, do your best. If you have something to offer, offer it. If you need something, ask and reach out. I know it's a hard time. Like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for things that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, put out into your networks, like, if you don't have a mask, and, like, obviously you don't want to buy medical masks that, you know, healthcare workers might need.
Mm-hmm. Lots of Buy Nothing groups have been having people sew a bunch and hand them out.
So if you just, you know, post around or, you know, see if, you know, the odds are pretty good that someone is sewing them that you know. It's pretty, kind of an incredible thing. Like, the thing about, like, all right, the country just figured out like, out of nowhere, all right, we need 300 million masks right now. And everyone with the sewing machine seems to be dusting them off and sewing them and spreading them around, because 300 million is a big number, but if everyone does it, who knows, maybe we'll get there. So,
you know, we can find some solace in mutual aid and supporting each other, doing our best.
Mm-hmm.
And taking care of yourself, finding those things that are your escape. It's totally okay to do some escape.
Speaking of which, we should play that game.
Which game? Oh, the bike. The bike video.
Knights and Bikes.
Yeah.
Do you want to start playing it?
No, I'm not a comfortable enough video game player to like.
No, let's do it. Let's just do it. Just play like the first 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. We're gonna do a little escape.
Oh God.
This is totally relevant. All right, I gotta figure out how to get it on here.
I could just hear.
Okay, you can listen.
Okay.
If they say anything that I need to know, let me know.
Okay.
All right. Local friend can join in any time. Okay, that's what we want. I'm gonna turn you up a little bit.
So for her, there's nothing happening.
Oh yeah, and we have feeding geese. I saw in the trailer. There's a goose in this game because it's a British game, and apparently all British indie games need to have a goose.
Press A to join.
Oh yeah, now you do it. You gotta do A. That's B.
Yep.
Attempt to steer. Oh yeah, let's come out of it. Oops. Oh, you can hit stuff and get points. You can do a trick one.
Which one's L? It's just a really good song.
Good job, Daniel.
Rumbling.
They're not speaking, right?
No.
I like the art a lot. The style's cool. Rolls of toilet paper.
Is that me? No.
That's me. I'm just walking around with a haircut. I'm not sure I should do anything. Oh, the path. I see it now. Welcome, treasure seeker. Thank you. Ooh. Oh no, I've been caught. Fish jail. Demelza. Oh no. It's not.
God, we all need some toilet paper, don't we?
I know, you just. What? It's a weird flex right there. Demelza's dad.
It's like, that's kind of a lot of toilet paper.
Yeah, you're real cool. Alright. Hoarding's not okay. Goose. Ooh. I have an atom on my head. Direction. Find shelter. What buttons do you think? Let's figure that out. It's gonna just hide me thing.
I can't. I'm not playing right now, I guess.
No, I think that you're only that one character. Oh, that's okay. I'm only this character. There you go. Melzy.
Oh, they brought her with her.
An accident. Avalon's Peak.
So much toilet paper.
Oh. Ah. I just solve a puzzle to get over to you or something. Wait, can I go this one? No. Can I go in this one? No. Well, I might just have to make friends, I guess. Nope, never mind.
Bye, worms. That's what our kid would say. She doesn't really like worms, though.
No. Cool space shuttle.
Treasure.
Who are you? A fever? Sticking plasters. Is that a Britishism? I get to make a choice. Well, that's probably a good time to end this.
How charming.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Talk to you later. Peace.